All right. What's up, everybody? My people in Manhattan, the Boogie Down Bronx, Queens, or Staten Island, my homeboro, Brooklyn. Back at the winner of the video. As we all know, late, great NFL Hall of Famer Jim Brown passed away recently at the age of 87. I want to say rest in peace to him. And I'm going to do this video on him. This is going to be an entry to the greatest of all time series because Jim Brown arguably is the greatest football player to have ever lived. If you ask most people, he is. To me, Jim Brown's in my top five. No particular order, but, Jim Brown, Joe Montana, Tom Brady, Jerry Rice, and LT. That'd be my top five. And all those guys have a legit case to being called the greatest of all time. I would also throw in Deion Sanders. That may be controversial, but Deion, what he did for the NFL athletically, being the first true shutdown corner. Being great on defense, being great on offense, being great on special teams. I think Deion's earned the right to be in that conversation, but if somebody says no, then I understand. But I think Deion's in that conversation as well. But Jim Brown definitely is in that conversation. Here he is at Syracuse wearing the number 44. That number 44 has become legendary with Syracuse. It's legendary synonymous with Syracuse, and it all starts with him, Jim Brown. And also a little fun fact for all you don't know, in the 150th season of college football, they named Jim Brown the greatest college football player of all time. Jim Brown's the greatest college player of all time, arguably, and the greatest NFL player of all time. And Jim Brown's on the short list of the greatest natural athletes to have ever existed. He came to the NFL in 1957 and was named league MVP as a rookie. Can you imagine somebody doing that now, winning MVP as a rookie? The closest we've had to that was, Patrick Mahomes, who won MVP in technically his second year, but his first year starting. Lamar Jackson, same thing, won his MVP his second year. Dan Marino won MVP in his second year. That's the closest we've gotten to a guy winning MVP in his rookie year. Jim Brown went on to win MVP three more times in his career, in 1959 and in his final season in 1965. In 9 NFL seasons, he was an 8-time first-team All-Pro, 5 times led the NFL in rushing touchdowns. And at the time of his retirement, he held the NFL record for most rushing yards in a season, 1,863, which he set in 1963. He was the all-time leader in career rushing yards, 12,312, 106 rushing touchdowns, and 126 total touchdowns. Now, Jim Brown was a man amongst boys. If you ever watch his highlights, and I highly recommend his highlights, this dude was a man amongst boys. Straight steamroll dudes. Dude was 6'2", muscular, 200-something plus pounds of pure muscle. He could make guys miss. He preferred to run over guys. He's probably the greatest power back in NFL history. But Jim Brown, I see some plays where he made dudes miss. Jim Brown could play in any era. The 50s, 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2020s, the 2010s, then the 2020s. Could play in any era. Of course, in 1964, he helped lead the Cleveland Browns to the NFL championship, a 27-0 victory over the then Baltimore Colts, led by future Hall of Fame coach Don Shula and future Hall of Fame quarterback Johnny Unitas. It was the last championship the city of Cleveland would win for 52 years until LeBron, Kyrie, and the Cavaliers came back from down 3-1 to defeat the Warriors in 2016. And the Cleveland Browns now, they have a nice squad, so who knows? They could win the Super Bowl this year for Jim Brown. They have a nice squad, quiet as kept. Not trying to get off topic. After he retired, Jim Brown was inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1971. In 1969, he was named to the NFL's 50th anniversary team. In 1994, he was named to the 75th anniversary team as well. Jim Brown retired and started his career in Hollywood. Of course, here he is with the late Raquel Welch, who passed away earlier this year. Jim Brown and Raquel Welch, it was the first time in cinematic history where we saw an African-American man and a white woman have a love scene in a film. First time ever. Groundbreaking. And the film that they did, I believe was called 100 Rifles. A very entertaining film. Jim Brown, Raquel Welch, Burt Reynolds. It could have been better, but, very entertaining film. Of course, he starred another legendary film, one of my favorite movies of all time, Any Given Sunday, with another legendary actor, Al Pacino. Here he is, and I'm going to get you, sucker. In 2019, Jim Brown was named to the NFL's 100th anniversary team along with his former head coach, Paul Brown, and the Browns legends, Otto Graham and Marion Motley. See him there at the Super Bowl. Jim Brown, listen, do I think he's the greatest football player of all time? Personally, no. But if somebody were to say he was, I wouldn't argue because he definitely has a case. Like I said, at the time of his retirement, he held the all-time rushing yards record, rushing touchdowns record, and total touchdowns record. He's since been passed up by several people, but he was a legend. He was a living legend. He's done a lot, for the communities and the gangs out in Los Angeles. At the height of the LA riots, Jim Brown stepped in and tried to get a truce between the gangs, which contributed to the decrease in gang violence in Los Angeles between 1992 and 2010. For all you don't know, he's done a lot. He's done a lot for his community. He did a lot for the game of football. He will be missed. But tell me what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you believe Jim Brown is the greatest football player of all time? Do you think he's the greatest athlete of all time? Do you think he's the greatest running back of all time? Tell me what you think in the comment section down below. I'm going to see you all.